Okay, we are live for our regular council meeting of Tuesday, June 14th. Thank you all for joining us. We have an agenda in front of us. Mr. Coleman, any additions or deletions?
One addition, Madam Chair, members of council, is the addition of 5E3, and that's cancellation of the June 28th regular council meeting.
Okay, cancellation of June 28th regular council meeting. Thank you. Someone want to move as amended? Thank you. Councillor Wanchuk, all in favor? That's unanimous. We have some minutes of May 24th regular council meeting. Someone want to move those? Councillor Lewis, thank you very much. All in favor? Unanimous. We have an opportunity at the beginning of every meeting for anybody from the public who'd like to address council on a matter that is not on the agenda, can do so now. Anyone who'd like to address council on an item that's not on the agenda? Come forward, sir. State your name and your address. Thank you very much. We can get the, and you'll have to turn your microphone on. Oh, here, we got some help for you. Start with your name and address, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Delpre Verdi. My address is number 80-50452, Range Road 245, Leduc County.
Thank you. And you have an opportunity. We have 5 minutes set aside for any item that you would like that's not on the agenda. So go ahead. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service to the county, and thank you for the platform. I just wanted to come by because there's some neighbors and residents in our area that have had some concern regarding our councillor not residing in Leduc County anymore.
Okay.
So just wanted to address that.
And what division is that, sir?
Division 3, please.
Okay. Thank you. What we do is this isn't an opportunity for debate, Mr. Verdi. What we will do is we will have administration respond to you in writing with what they know.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Thank you. All right, on to staff introductions, starting with Ms. Weiss and then Mr. Bain.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Council. I get the pleasure of introducing you to Mrs. Christina Kwok, and she joined our team as the Manager of Accounting Services. She joined us last week. And we are very happy to have her on board as part and joining Leduc County.
So just new as in last week. Well, come on up. I have a county pin for you. Thank you for joining our team. There you go. And look forward to seeing you after 10 years or 15 years. Thank you. Thank you and welcome.
Yes. Madam Chair, members of council, I'd like to introduce Kayla Raymond. Kayla started with us last week as well. So she's a planner in our development services group, and she'll be dealing with development permits and working with the land use bylaw, working with our residents and helping with process and so on. So we're really happy to have her with our team. She spent the last year or so with Strathcona County, so she brings some experience to the table, and we're very happy to have her with the county.
Welcome, Kayla. Come on here. You don't look old enough to work anywhere else. So welcome, and we look forward to working with you. Next, Ms. Weiss, are you?
Yes, I am.
All right, 5A1, establish 2022 tax sale date. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Again, good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Council. I am here today as part of the tax recovery process. So the tax recovery process actually starts last year. It's quite a process that ultimately culminates in the tax sale, which I'm here to set that date today. So the tax recovery process starts On March 31st of the prior year, we put on what's called a tax notification. Those are on any properties that have 2 years or more, 2 years of arrears. If we don't get payment by the following year, so now these notifications were placed in 2021. If we don't receive payment by March 31st of 2022, they then get added to what we call the tax sale list. So we're at that point, the taxes are now 3 years in arrears, so we begin the process of the tax sale. So there's several different steps that take place through it. The first of which is to set the date, proposing Wednesday, November 2nd at 10 a.m. at County Centre in Council Chambers. Then we start by sending out registered letters. We send the letters to anybody on title, so any mortgager, as well as the owners of the properties. There are specific rules regarding advertising through both the Alberta Gazette as well as some local papers. And then finally, if we get to that point, a copy of the advertisement is sent to the owner of the parcel of land. So at any point between now and November 2nd at 10 a.m., someone can come in, they can pay off their arrears, or they can get go into what's called a tax agreement with me. And that is set out under the MGA, where you can have up to 3 years to get into a tax agreement to have their name removed from the tax sale list. So that is the premise of my recommendation. So I'm just looking that council establish the tax sale date for Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022 at 10 a.m. in Council Centre, County Centre.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Again, this is pretty standard. We do this annually, and I know you do field a lot of questions on the appropriateness and the effort of the county to make sure that we're working with people that may be in arrears, and you always assure us that happens. And again, I've never received anything from anybody that you have not done that. So today I would be prepared to move the recommendation that council establish the tax sale date for Wednesday, November 2, 2022 at 10 a.m. at County Centre.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis, question or comment?
Question, do you have an idea of how many properties you have on this tax sale list at this moment?
Not quite yet. Last time I looked at it, it was about 30, and I've been working with 2 on getting tax agreements. We try to work with them. We actually start back in February, give them a call just as a heads up that this is potentially coming. That gives them a lot longer to be able to work with us on an agreement and or get their arrears paid. And so we are at about 30. I don't know what we're at as of today.
And the question, have we ever had a tax sale, or do most people and businesses come through before tax sales?
So through Madam Mayor, yes, we have had one tax sale that nobody showed up in when I've been here.
In your time?
Yes.
Okay,
in my
thank
time.
you. So for the most part, by giving time and giving notice, people are able to come through with either a plan or payment. So this is just really our last step.
Yes.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Smith to accept the recommendation. No more comments or questions. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think next one is Mr. Downey and Mr. Mariglod, and this is report 5B1, Kavanaugh Wastewater Lagoon Renewal Additional Funding Request.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We are here today asking for additional $134,000 for the Kavanaugh Lagoon project, which is a 2022 capital project for the rehabilitation of the lagoon, which also includes desludging of the lagoon. We put this out to tender beginning of the year, quite a bit of interest, but we only had 2 submissions. We provided a couple different options in the pricing schedule, being that sludge can be disposed of on land application, typically agricultural land, or it can be disposed of at a landfill, classified landfill. The pricing came in too high for the landfill option, and the sludge testing that was done indicated that it was slightly outside of the parameters for applying to agricultural land and would require an exemption from Alberta Environment. That was applied for and was approved, but it wasn't approved until just like a few days prior to seeding. So it wasn't feasible to get everything in place so that they could get the sludge on the land and the project awarded and contract executed and all those type of contract issue items. So since then, we've been working with the contractor to come up with solutions. They proposed that one of the solutions would be apply the sludge to pasture land, which is the same process for agricultural land, same application, same process, and really no difference other, they still have to till it into the land and meet certain requirements for Alberta environment. The other option was to apply the sludge to agricultural croplands after the crops were taken off, which would be this fall. They provided pricing for both of those. The reason for the pricing increase is mainly due to fuel and the cost of oil, the materials which are made up of oil, like your PVC pipe, your lagoon liners, HDPE, and the control structures, HDPE as well. Other items that are increasing the cost is the location of the sludge being applied to the agricultural land is farther away than what the original piece of land was. And then if we apply it in the fall after the crops are taken off, there's an increased cost for fall winter operations. So administration developed the risk with proceeding and not proceeding with this project. The risk with proceeding with this project is an additional $134,000 request. Utilization of MSI capital funds that could be used elsewhere. The fall crop land sludge application option increases the likelihood of project carryover into 2023. Risk with not proceeding with this project. This project is partially funded by Alberta Municipal Water and Wastewater Partnership Grant, and the potential loss of that grant funding being that the grant funding expires for this project at the end of the year. So that's $228,000 and change. Reduced treatment effectiveness of the lagoon and reduced hydraulic treatment capacity. So administration is recommending additional $134,000 be funded from MSI Capital for this project.
Thank you very much for that report. Looking for any questions from council. Councillor Scobie, the floor is yours.
Have you looked at the possibility of just stockpiling, taking out of the lagoon, put it on a field, a grain field close there? I've got a project out there in my area where the city of Edmonton is hauling out and it's just getting stockpiled, and the farming operation will spread it themselves later after crops are off. Have we taken a look at the possibility of just putting it there and leaving it for the farmer to spread when the time is right?
During the tendering phase, there was discussions in regards to storing the sludge and drying it in a couple different ways. And one of those ways would have been, like in geo bags or some type of geotextile, and then drying it and then disposing of it later or applying it later. So that was an option. We left it wide open during the tendering. We didn't specify how it had to be done, that it just had to meet, Alberta environments and, engineering standard requirements. So that was an option.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Vandenberg?
So with the Kavanaugh project, is it fair to say that it's one of many that the county, in terms of having these lagoons, it's part of the maintenance, and that not only is Kavanaugh on the list of getting done, but there's others after this, kind of signifies the importance of turning attention to it. Would you agree?
Absolutely. So yeah, sludge management is part of, owning and operating a lagoon, and we need to, manage that sludge so that we have the, hydraulic capacity as well as the treatment effectiveness.
I just wanted to mention that this is about a 20% overrun, which is unfortunate, but standing to lose the approved capital available for this project, because we have much more, is a high risk.
Thank you. I guess I need a little bit more clarification. We have a recommendation to move some money from MSI Capital. What is the plan for the sludge? Because you gave some options, cropland in the fall or pasture land, but then I heard it needed to be worked in because I know, or does it? Because that's what you have to do from a dairy sludge perspective. And that's the only reference point I have.
Yeah, so the preferred option, both for the county and for the contractor, is to incorporate it into pasture land here fairly soon. That's assuming that they can secure some, an arrangement with a landowner. And they've had multiple discussions with different landowners and have told us that that should not be an issue. If that doesn't work out and pasture land is not secured, then the plan would be in the fall to apply to cropland. And so both of those processes would be the same as far as, the soil sampling, the sludge characterization, and the application to the land.
Okay, and so, and I see I have you, Councillor Smith, just one further question. And then it is Alberta, and who is responsible for the testing once that goes down and the monitoring and once it goes out into the field? Is it an Alberta environment piece or is it Leduc County?
It is the contractor that's responsible for all of that, for the application, the processing of that sludge, the application to the land, and then any follow-up reporting. It goes across our desk as well, obviously, but
they are
in the contract, they are responsible for it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith.
Again, just a pile of work that needs to be done. New Sarepta Lagoon was done. There was 12 feet of sludge in the 4 cells. Again, this looks like 50% and has already been sludge buildup. So I would hope that you would continue this year with the work, probably just a suggestion, and I know you guys will do what's right with it. But right now the pasture land will probably be used, and with the rain, it'll probably grow. So I'm not sure of any farmers that would take their cows off just to take the fertilizer, and that would probably be in the fall. So I think your best bet, traditionally what we see from our farmers is after their crops are off, they'll spread whatever manure from their barns and stuff. So that may be where they want to go. And it may delay the project, but that's just a reality because of the challenge we have. So based on that and based on the success of New Sarepta Lagoon, maintenance, and now Kavanaugh, and of course there's more lagoons in budget going forward. So this work needs to be done. I would move the recommendation. The council direct administration to utilize $134,000 from MSI Capital to fund the shortfall for the Kavanaugh Wastewater Lagoon Renewal Project.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Palazzo.
Yeah, just a little quick comment to that. I'm still wondering what the difference might be between human waste and animal waste. My first thought would be to put it on a field and work it in first, because that's the law. Now, if you're going to put that on a pasture, that is not going to get worked in unless the farmer's planning on plowing down his pasture. So I don't know, is there a difference here? Because it should be, the first thought would be a farmland, work it in, and it's gone, or it's in.
What I was told was it's the same process. So they have to work it into the land with pasture land. Now, one thing they did mention is often the applying it to pasture land will be the first step in transitioning it over to cropland. They can, sometimes they'll do that. So
I'm fine with that. It's just, my thought was further than that, because most pasture land is in pasture for many years. And if you're just going to put it on there, it's going to sit there. It eventually will soak in, yes, but the smell won't be worked in.
yeah, no, it has to be incorporated into the soil.
Okay.
And they can use additives for that as well to help with that.
Councillor Lewis.
Is there an idea of how many acres this would spread over?
That's part of all the application process. And so it's based on the quantity of the sludge, probably the thickness of the soil, the characteristics of the soil. It also has to do with localized drainage and waterways, and it's quite a comprehensive application.
So considering all that you just said in response to Councillor Lewis's question, is there a concern that the price will go up from the contractor, or are we locked into a price with the contractor?
So the tender has unit pricing in it, and so it's quantity and unit rate based. And they have provided pricing for these two different options. And so we don't foresee any pricing changes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Smith has put the motion on the floor. Any further comments or questions or debate? I am seeing none. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
5C, Mr. Honesty, I believe you have a number of reports for us from Community Services, starting with Recreation Cost Share Agreement, City of Leduc.
Thank you and good afternoon. Yeah, the first item before you is the cost share agreement with the City of Leduc. For the last few months, myself as well as representative council have worked with the City of Leduc to review this agreement. Just to clarify, this isn't a rewrite of the agreement. This is a review primarily for the purposes of updating our contribution, but we also did work with the committee to identify and address any concerns with the agreement itself, as well as review our capital submissions or the city's capital submissions that we'll discuss in a minute. I've identified for council the highlights of the changes to the agreement. Obviously, the contribution is the first significant change. We also then updated our population, and the council is aware that due to the 21 census, we updated the allocation of percentage. We also introduced a cap to the McLab operating, and this is the similar principle to what we did to the LRC. It just gives the county some more assurances to the future impacts of the city's operations of that facility. We've updated and reviewed through the cost share. We do support grants to community organizations, but we make sure that there is not duplication of those grants. So through a review, we've identified grants that we might fund directly, and we would remove those from that as well. We also left and remained a cap of $2 million operating for the Leduc Recreation Centre. As the years go by, obviously operating deficits continue to increase, but that cap was agreed to by the city and just gives us the same assurances to what our contributions would be in the future. And then we made a slight change through the agreement. We have like this council committee, 2 representatives from the city, 2 representatives from the county, and as well as administration to meet on a regular basis. And we just tweaked that slightly to reinforce that we will meet annually and we will talk capital. So it gives us a chance for the city to present their capital projects annually to us as a committee, which allows us to be more informed through council and administration in the future. The recommendation is before you. The reason it's written as it is the 340,000 is what we have in budget. That was the number I placed in there from previous years. The 60,000 is required to meet our commitment that we've tentatively agreed to, which is the 400,000 for 22, 23, and 24.
Done?
Done.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any questions? Oh, Ms. Klamosko.
I just wanted to add one point for council's consideration and discussion was upon review of the agreement, there is no end date identified within the agreement. So wanted to bring that point for discussion today with council, just whether or not that would be an amendment that they'd like to proceed with, just because the funding commitment is for a 3-year funding agreement, but there's no ending point of the agreement itself. So just wanted to bring that specifically to council's attention. Thank you.
Mr. Honesty, comment on that, or I'm on the committee. I didn't notice. I thought we would continue to work with them in 3-year pieces, but
I guess that's what we have to determine. You know, the way it was originally identified is that this would not be a set date, that it would be an ever-going partnership. So to set a date, the only thing I clarified is if we do request to change that, we would have to go back to the City of Leduc. They've approved the agreement last night, but we would have to ask to review that, add that, and continue to work with them on that amendment.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take Councillor Vandenberg. Did you have your hand up?
Yes.
And then Councillor Smith.
In Schedule B, it does specifically reference 3-year term, 2022 to 2024. Schedule C is the operating cost contribution. That's in there. I'm just flipping through to find out on the capital side.
And just to clarify on that, capital is as agreed to by the county annually. So
It's an annual.
if there's no,
So
yeah.
Councillor Smith?
I won't be supporting the agreement without an end date. We do have an agreement right now with the city of Leduc that has no end date, and that's probably one of the biggest issues that we have with the city of Leduc. So just learning from that agreement without an end date, and I know it creates extra work. I would like to see an end date because I know the airport cost share has no end date, and there's no desire to maybe discuss fairness towards the county of Leduc. So I would hope that change. I have a follow-up on the capital plan on page 14 of the or Schedule F. And the way it's worded is a 5-year capital plan will be submitted annually by the city to the county no later than September 30 each year. Through the plan, the city will notify, underline notify, county administration of new capital expenditures or major renovations upgrade to be cost shared through the revolving. I don't want to be notified. I want to be in discussion. So I have a problem with that. It says we'll discuss projects deemed to fall outside of the scope. So there's another one. So that's a hole for me where this states that the city of Leduc will come with their plan. They will notify us what the plan is, and it's to be cost shared. So that is not clear to me. That isn't a discussion one. So there's another area I'd like to see. I'd like to see it probably just that there's a presentation of the capital plan, and then we not to be notified, but go into joint discussions on what would be funded, because that doesn't appear. It just says we're notified of the new capital expenditures to be cost shared. So that's, here's your bill. In that wording, I'd rather have it will negotiate, engage county of the desired capital expenditures, and discussion of cost share go through. Because the way it is right now, we get notified and it goes into cost share. And that's just the wording. It's probably not the intent, but I'd like that clarified that we're not
Mr.
just
Honesty,
notified.
do you have a response to that?
Yeah, and just to clarify,
Schedule
find
F.
the exact specifics, but Leduc County, it reviews and approves capital expenditures. So they will notify us through the 5-year plan in the fall. They will then verify that project with us after the interim budget is approved. And then the county will review and approve any capital contributions to that.
I think that's page 10 of the document. Page 20 of 103 has an annual schedule of agreement deliverables, which includes county to confirm current year cost shareable capital projects. So I'm thinking that's the point where we can say yes or no. Is that correct, Mr. Honesty?
I apologize.
That's okay. Take your time.
Do want to make sure we identify it. 5.3. County shall review the anticipated capital costs, and where the county commits to cost share the project, approve the associated capital contribution in accordance with 5.4. So the intent of that is that we will review and approve specific projects. So their notification is not a commitment of council support. The notification is just to notify us of a project and then initiate that process of review and approval.
Okay.
And I do, if I could follow up, and I do see that in the page that you suggested. However, in your Schedule F, which is a major capital approval process, the one way you could get through it is where it says number 1 capital plan. You go through the first sentence, and then it says through the plan, the city will notify county admin of new capital expenditures, upgrades to be negotiated for cost share. It tells me that it's not a given, and it is on the other page, but I don't want to. This is a gray area that needs to be clarified. That it's
So you're saying there's a little bit of a two different messages and two different parts of the agreement.
And the Schedule F will drive how we negotiate it. So one word where it says to be cost shared or upgrades to be negotiated for cost share would then at least say would indicate it's a discussion in the schedule. And again, the mayor did point out an area where there is clarity, but if there's two different versions of it, sorry about that, it will need to be tidied up.
Thank you. Councillor Vandenberg.
So further to Councillor Smith's point on page 24 of the package under number 1, the second part of that second paragraph of which he referred to further goes on to say that both parties will discuss projects deemed to fall and the parties will discuss projects deemed to fall outside the scope of the agreement prior to the planning phase. If consensus on capital contribution is not achieved based on a joint review of the 5-year plan, we go into a dispute resolution procedure, which is Schedule E. So once again, I think to me that there's clarity around the dates and the timeline of both the operating side and the capital side. Yes, you could rubber stamp it with a particular end date, but I don't know that it's necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Vandenberg.
And I'll follow up with that in the capital plan. I was looking at the first paragraph. The second paragraph speaks about projects that fall outside of the scope. So your first paragraph talks about the ones that are in the scope. The second paragraph talks about probably special projects that aren't there that we may discuss. So there's a little bit, again, the city of Leduc, it seems year after year after year, we need to be more specific of what we would like. We're cost sharing, but we need to do due diligence for the residents, as I think the airport agreement is a perfect example of if there's something that is a gray area open for interpretation and there's no willingness to renegotiate because there's not a set date. I mean, the city of Leduc has stated they're pretty happy with the tax share agreement. Why negotiate? They just get their cut each year. So I want to be careful. I want to fund these projects. I agree with the extra money, but I also need to protect the ratepayers here because some of the agreements in the past here have cost the county and the residents money.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Myself and Councillor Vandenberg sit on this negotiating committee. And I'll be honest and say the city of Leduc was very generous. The $400,000 amount is not what the cost was. It was a cost that we negotiated down from a significant higher, and that had to do with the change in population from the census. So they were generous. I mean, I don't think they would be worrisome about an added word in there, but I'm not worried about that piece because of the other pieces around capital. I guess we could approve it as amended and then see if they approve it. I'm not sure what that process would be. Back to the end date brought up by Ms. Klamosko. For me, because we have a funding deadline of 3 years, that sort of means that's all we're on the hook for is 3 years worth of funding. The notion of the ongoing agreement is that for at least in the next 10 to 12 years, the county probably will be working with the city to use their recreation facilities to the best, to the benefit of our residents. I'm not sure how the end date or why our lawyer, because this did go through legal, did it not, Mr.?
This was just a preliminary review. The
Okay.
previous editions had legal
Okay.
review. This was just a
So
review.
if someone can explain why, I mean, you can't, if you have an agreement but no funding attached to it, then it really is just an agreement in principle, which after 3 years this would become. So I'm not so concerned about that, but I am willing to listen to the wisdom of my colleagues on this, and or Mr. Honesty, and or Ms. Klamosko, and or Mr. Coleman. So anyone else who'd like to weigh in? I am seeing no one. Mr. Coleman.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of council. So part of our job is to expose or show risk. The severity of the risk varies, obviously. I'm not uncomfortable if this agreement goes ahead today. I think there has been good faith negotiations by our committee between the two parties. It was important that we bring these concerns to your attention, just so eyes wide open when council makes their decision. It does allow us then, before the next agreement comes in play in 3 years, to maybe look at a review of this in a more critical way if we need to. The other option is we could make the minor change suggestions as amended and see what the city of Leduc does with the minor adjustments. Part of my job is to give you advice.
Yep.
My advice is there isn't significant harm or issue in signing it as is, if that's the will of council. But I think there is merit in reviewing this agreement with our legal counsel going forward. What we are seeing in the relationships in other places, not necessarily
Yes.
our relationship, but the relationship in other municipalities between their urban partners, is an abuse of the arbitration process and the lack of awareness of arbitrators in understanding the issues between the two municipalities. I think for the most part, our agreement bridges that and we wouldn't have problems, but it wouldn't hurt at some point in time in the next number of years to review it. As you said, Madam Chair, the city of Leduc is giving us a reasonable and fair deal. I think all of council would agree to that. And the details of the agreement are reasonable to both parties at this time, but there are a couple cautions.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. I'm going to take Councillor Lewis if I can. Councillor Smith, thank you very much. Councillor Lewis, floor is
Thank
yours.
you. I would be comfortable going forward with the recommendation, although I question if we should add in the 2023 and 2024 years, because it would tie us to an end date of that at least. Should we not put an end date in the actual agreement?
And are those put in there for funding, correct?
The intent of the 2022 is to address the funding. With 2022, 3 and 4, we would amend our future year budgets to make sure we have the funds available.
Okay.
But if you want to amend the motion.
Councillor Smith?
Okay, and I'm going to keep pounding on the point. I just want to bring out another term in the agreement, which is left open for interpretation and a due diligence. Article 3, term and renewal, 3.1, page 14 on our package. States, notwithstanding the date of execution, the term of this agreement shall be the period commencing January 1, 2022, and continuing thereafter until terminated by mutual agreement of the parties. Prior existing agreements of similar nature are ineffective as of the effective date. The parties, through the cost share agreement planning and consultation committee, shall review this agreement at least every 3 years. Any amendments to this agreement shall be effective only if agreed to in writing by the parties. That sounds like the last paragraph on the airport cost share. So please don't support it. We've suffered through not putting term dates on stuff. And if you look at Article 3, there's enough in there to be concerning that there needs to be, this agreement comes into effect on date of signing, and this agreement doesn't need to be terminated by agreement of both parties, but by a date. So I can't support what we have there today. I've dragged ratepayers too long through this airport one with the, let's do it in good faith, and it's just too expensive. So please, let's just put an end date on it. We know what happens if we don't.
Councillor Vandenberg?
I commend Councillor Smith for his diligence in going through this document, and I missed this one, 3.1. I agree with you on this one. It is both parties agree, terminate, both parties agree to in writing. I don't agree with that. It should be clear that any one party could effectively terminate the agreement through writing, as opposed to both parties agreeing. So that one there, I would side with you on.
Thank you. I'm going to look for some advice from Mr. Coleman. I'm thinking that instead of having this fail, perhaps we can refer it back to administration for some additional areas to look at with, and be happy at any time as part of the committee member to do that with you, Mr. Honesty, to refer this back to see if we can get some clarity on those two pieces and then bring it back. Do I need to say which date if it's a referral?
Yeah, that'd be appropriate to give some timelines, Madam Chair. I think if you gave us a month to take a look at
1
it.
month?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to put a motion on the floor to refer this document back to administration to look at a potential end date for the agreement, as well as ensuring that capital is clearly a negotiated part. Yep.
I'm okay with a 3-year end date on an agreement that may come or go. The other part, I've been assured by administration that,
It's in there.
yeah, that's, you know, there's a gray area, but within 3 years, if things go south, we don't need to beg to get out of it. It falls out. And if there's problems that need to be fixed, it can go through. So the biggest one is just, if you can put an end date for 3 years, signing on January 1, 2022, December 3/1, 2025, it's over, then we can start and we can see where we're going. Because they have done it so in good faith. I'm willing to support the transfer of the funds. I just need an end date on it. Thank you.
Councillor Vandenberg?
But I also think to add to that, which is fine, Article 3, term and renewal, we need to get away from the mutual agreement of the parties. Okay, I think that that is a capture for us.
So my referral motion is on the floor, that we bring this to administration to look at an end date for the agreement, as well as ensure the capital is clearly negotiated and bring back to council on July 12th, 2022.
That's fine.
Sorry,
Do it all.
are we okay?
We're good.
Okay, so we understand why I've put the referral motion back for some clarity and some confidence. So I'm not seeing any more hands. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thanks.
If I may just clarify that we won't make any contributions until we've resolved the agreement. Okay.
Thank you.
Item number 2 is the 2020 and 2021 cost share capital with the city of Leduc. These were also items that we've met with councils on a few occasions and did bring back to this committee to review and address any concerns. And the committee has recommended to bring back to council for support. The way the cost share is written, once we agree to projects, then those projects will make up a contribution at their completion. So just for clarity, 2021 we have reviewed in the past, but we did not approve as council. Or 2020, 2021 originally council did not support any projects by the city of Leduc. Obviously, that led to us having more conversations with the city of Leduc and bring it back for reconsideration of council. So there are 2 funds to recommended. 2020 would be 96,472. 2021 would be 78,795.
Thank you very much. And again, this is passed, so it doesn't have to deal with our current referral motion on the new agreement. Councillor Vandenberg, any comments from the committee perspective?
No, it's the whole process was well open, and City of Leduc was very much accommodating, and the work that Dean Honesty and his counterpart did do on that suggested nothing out of the usual. And I think that paying the 2021 now I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, so I will put the motion on the floor, and it is 2-part. Leduc County Council support the 2020 capital program as submitted by the city of Leduc and approve the funding contribution of $96,472. And number 2, that Leduc County Council support the 2021 capital program as submitted by the city of Leduc and approve a funding contribution of $78,795. Comments, questions, or debate? Councillor Smith?
I can support these numbers today. Again, they look like good projects. Thank you for removing the grain elevator. Leduc Lions Park and the Leduc Golf Club.
We're on a different,
Oh,
you're on
I'm
the
in the
next
wrong one.
report. You
I'm in
have
the
read ahead.
recreational cost share.
Once again, you have read ahead, my friend.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, well, this one looks okay too.
Because
I've
this one
gone
is
through it.
2022, right? No
Okay, and
worries.
I'll be supporting both things.
I know how you are. Any further comments? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
2022 items have been identified by the city of Duke, and I guess this is an example of how we execute the agreement. So they've identified the projects for 2022. Ideally, we do this a little bit earlier in the year, but just do the committee process. It's coming to you here in June. So we are recommending approval with the removal of 3 projects: the grain elevator, Leduc Lions Park, and the Leduc Golf Course projects, which are not in line with the existing agreement.
Question to Mr. Coleman, since we've referred the recreation cost share back to administration, are we able to approve this since that is not a done deal agreement right now? I am not sure on process. Thank you.
Yeah, procedurally might be best to refer this and approve both items at the next
Bring them
meeting.
back together.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for a referral motion of the 2020 recreation cost share of the city of Leduc. Councillor Smith, thank you. And the reason for the referral is clear. We haven't approved the agreement, so we can't approve parts in the agreement. Comments, questions, debate? Yep.
I'll save my Thorsby comments till the Thorsby item comes up in a minute. Thank you, Dean, for going through and identifying projects. And I'll just look at one as an example, Leduc Golf Club. Wow, I wouldn't want to be a municipality in business and supporting golf clubs while my private members and ratepayers were doing it. So thank you for not supporting the Leduc Golf Club. And this seems like the city of Leduc has really invested in it lately, but again, it would be a hard sell to my ratepayers to tell them that we're subsidizing a golf course and then they need to go pay golf someplace. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vandenberg?
Well, I thought on a referral motion, we don't have an opportunity to debate it. We just vote on it.
Deferral. I'm not sure.
Referral?
Deferral and referral, you
Referral?
can't.
Is this a referral?
This is referral.
But I will say, I will speak to the grain elevator. That was something that when you sit in silence and hear what they have to say, they said it all without us saying anything about the grain elevator. So you could take a position that is a connecting point to the rule, because that's kind of the basis. That's one of the distribution points of agriculture. But in this case, the city of Leduc just volunteered it off. So we didn't pursue it any further.
We weren't that great a negotiators.
It went.
All right, we have a referral motion so that it aligns with the previous referral motion. All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Thorsby.
We have the recommendation for 2019 final payment. If council recalls, we brought this forward a couple of times to council, originally not supporting their audited statement due to the variances that could not be identified. Since that time, we worked with them extensively to try and have some explanation, but due to changes in administration, we weren't able to get any further clarification of why those variances were in there from budget to actual. So in the end, we proposed a sort of a settlement agreement that they have agreed to, and I am recommending support of $60,000. Based on the audit, our contribution would have been just over 69,000. You know, it's less about the dollar amount and more about just the accountability towards the understanding of why that variance was there. So I am recommending the support of $60,000 to complete the 2019 cost share.
Thank you very much. I will support this motion. And again, it was unfortunate that there were some auditing and financial difficulties in the town of Thorsby, but we do know that our residents use the recreation facilities and the library in 2019 and did have the advantage to do that. And I think this is about moving forward. We've learned a lot about how to work with Thorsby as they went through their transition. And I think that this is a really good compromise for the county. Councillor Balazer?
Yeah, I too will support this. I know, Dean, you've been trying for a number of years to get some sort of numbers put together for this, and it just seemed to be impossible. So coming to this conclusion, I think it's a really good compromise at the end. And by the look at, we're even still going to save a few dollars at the bottom line. So I thank you for that.
Councillor Balazer, could I put your name to that?
Yes, I will do that.
So Councillor Balazer moves that Leduc County Council approve the final payment for the 2019 Recreation and Library cost share in the amount of $60,000 to the town of Thorsby. We have a motion on the floor. Councillor Smith?
I won't read the auditor report for Thorsby, but I hope all of you have spent your time in. I'll draw your the auditor's responsibility for the audit of the financial statement. There's some warning signs in there that make for some excellent reading. And again, some concerns to the county going forward, but definitely I'm not reading it into the record. Please take time to go through where it starts with conclude on the appropriateness of management's use.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Scobie.
I guess I kind of understand. I've had, I guess, the opportunity to have some of the problems that they were having shared with me, but with the new council and new administration and everything, I think they were fairly badly derailed, but I think they're on track. And
Agreed.
There is no going back and finding where some of this stuff went. So this is the best, is just a number that everybody's happy with. I think it's time to go ahead with it and put it behind us, and just make sure that all these statements and stuff are coming in properly and that they're getting their books done, and which I think will happen. Yep. So I'm confident that we'll be back on track here after this.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions, or debate? I am seeing none. All in favor? That's unanimous.
And just as an intro to the 2022 item, just to make sure council's aware, we still have a lot of work to do with Thorsby yet related to 2021. So that's why that is not before you yet today. We've addressed 2019, 2020 is addressed. We still have a lot of work to do with the town to come to some conclusions, or even them to prepare their audit for 2021. So that is why that's not coming before you today. The 2022 budget has been submitted, and we've created a motion which addresses sort of unanticipated increases. So I guess this is maybe a reflection of a change in council, a renewal commitment to recreation within that town, which had previously had significant cuts and changes to their levels of service. So from my perspective, it was sort of unanticipated increases following the election, following them setting their budget. So I am recommending support of the budget. As was mentioned, we do have a better and a stronger working relationship with the town for 2022. We are supportive of the projects they're trying to do to upgrade and continually make sure it's a safe and quality facility. And there's a lot of work to do yet to catch up from the previous years. So there are changes to their operating expenditures. Much of that is as they continue to really define their levels of service, how many hours are they open, number of staff, those sort of things. They have a budget, but we're continuing to work with them closely to really refine what the community expects and what is feasible for them and for us. So I have recommended support. It does require some additional funding. And of course, we only pay a budgetary payment now. The rest will be paid at the time of an audit next year. So that's when we'll truly understand the costs of 2022 for the town.
Okay, Councillor Vandenberg.
So I was a little bit confused as to the recommendation until you just explained that part a little bit further. And number two is the payment 2001 based on number one. At first, that wasn't clear to me, and I think we should probably make that a little bit clearer. And then the other note is that it's an extra 16% increase as to what you're suggesting we ought to be considering. But I don't know what future year initiative reserve is. I understand internal savings, which is everybody in the county based on some savings can pitch in to pay for this, but I don't understand future year initiative reserve.
I have Ms. Klamosko who can explain that very clearly.
So that is the name of the reserve that would be getting used to fund the shortfall from the current year budget. So that just references that specific reserve.
That was in our budget before, that particular
So
name?
that reserve is in our reserve schedule.
Okay.
Councillor Lewis?
Thank you. It also says or 2022 internal savings. So I guess the question would be, which one is it coming from?
So before we make draws at the end of the year through our year-end process, if we have annual surplus at the end of the year, as opposed to drawing from the reserve to then put money back into reserve at the end of the year because we put surplus into reserves, we would just bypass the step and say, if we have surplus at the end of the year, we'll use that to fund this amount. If there's no surplus available, then we would use reserve to fund that shortfall.
Councillor Vandenberg?
So and the internal savings part, I understand completely, but in an earlier, when we have the overage on the lagoon, why wouldn't that verbiage be used in there too?
For that program, we were using MSI capital funding, so we had the ability just to increase the amount to draw from our MSI capital reserve funding that we received from the province of Alberta. So it was different funding sources, so we just continued to use the MSI capital money that was identified to be used in that project.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Honesty, it's exciting to see this renewal and recreation. In Thorsby, in the town of Thorsby, it does, what did we have, 62% is our share around there. The working relationship between yourself and the recreation is, I assume, quite strong. I know it had been in the past. And at our last Parks PRAC meeting, we had an opportunity to look at the facilities there. You know, it's a great facility for a small town to have. And I'm glad that they're reinvesting in it, and we will be a good partner and reinvest with them. So thank you for that. So any other comments or questions? And I am looking for someone to put a motion on the table. Thanks. Councillor Thorsby. You now have a whole town. Councillor Scobie, and Thorsby kind of sounds the same. Councillor Scobie will move that number one, Leduc County Council accept the 2022 budget from the town of Thorsby for the cost share and recreation library service and its associated budget impact of $335,881, which is to be funded by $281,830 from 2022 approved operating budget, and the remaining $54,051 by operating special purpose future year initiative reserve or 2022 internal savings. And number two, approve a payment for the 2022 recreation and library cost share in the amount of $201,528 to the town of Thorsby. The motion is read and on the floor. Any further comments or questions? I am seeing none. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous.
Thank you. The next item is the 2021 final payment to the town of Kalmar. We have received their audit, have reviewed their audit, and are recommending support with a final contribution of $162,143. There are some variances in there, primarily due to the pandemic, but it, you know, they did make adjustments to their operating expenditures as well to adjust that during the year. So, and the capital projects which are identified were previously approved and supported as well. So, no concerns here. I just want to clarify for council. Today, you do not have their 2022 budget. They've recently had change in their administration as well. So we weren't at a place where we were comfortable bringing forward some of their information, and we'll continue to work with them closely to address 2022 in the near future.
Okay, thank you for that. Comments or questions for Mr. Honesty? Counselor Lewis.
I'm happy to move the recommendation that Leduc County Council accept the 2021 audited financial statements from the town of Calmar for cost shared recreation and library services and approve a final payment for the 2021 recreation and library cost share in the amount of $162,143.
Thank you. We have the motion on the floor and read into the record. Any further comments or questions? I am seeing none. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. 5C7.
The one I have is the Village of Warburg, yes, 2021 final payment. Everything is consistent. Obviously, we have a strong working relationship with the Village of Warburg, and their numbers are always fairly consistent with what they budget. So we do have a recommendation to support a final payment of $39,049 for the final 2021 cost share.
Okay, so everything's as it should be between ourselves and Warburg with the recreation. Looking for someone to put a motion on the floor. Councillor Balazer. Okay, Councillor Balazer will move that Leduc County Council accept the 2021 audited financial statement from the Village of Warburg for cost shared recreation and library services and approve a final payment for 2021 recreation and library cost share in the amount of $39,049 for a total 2021 Leduc County contribution of $126,110 to the Village of Warburg. I knew it. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? Unanimous.
The 2022 budget has also been submitted by the village. Just some slight increases to the operating support to some of their community facilities, including the library. So just some minor adjustments to help those primarily volunteer groups be sustainable. So I am recommending support of the budget and the contribution as per the recommendation.
All right. Comments, questions? I am seeing none. Councillor Vandenberg.
Just a note that the slight increases. Historically, if I understand the information correct, we were paying 74%. Now it's at 60. Is that how I understand that?
No, I have not made that adjustment. That it continues to be 74% as per the motion of council from 2012.
60% of the payment will be.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
60% of 74%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
knew there's math in there somehow.
All right. Okay, looking for someone to put the motion on the floor. Councillor Balazer, Leduc County Council accept the 2022 budget from the Village of Warburg for cost share recreation and library services in the amount of $147,573 and approve a budget payment for the 2022 recreation and library cost share in the amount of $88,544. Motion is there. Going to call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Is this you still?
Sorry.
Are you still on at
Yeah.
5C9?
But yeah, thank you for your patience.
No, it's riveting.
The next item is the New Sarepta Agricultural Society. They have made a request for some support for some ice plant maintenance and repairs. I think it's timely we bring this one forward as well because, it is not a cost shared facility, but it's very similar to one of our major facilities within the county that we support. They have requested support for this repair. It is a regular maintenance and required project that I think, and I'm recommending support for to allow them to continue to make sure that's a quality facility within our region. I am recommending, and this is what we've done in the past, is we allocate the funds from our recreation capital budget. We set that through our MPCP budget each year, and there are funds available within that to support this project. So we would provide that to the Ag Society, and as we always do, we'll continue to work with them to identify future year projects and how the county can support their initiatives.
Thank you. Councillor Vandenberg.
Just for clarity, I'm not opposed to the project or the ask, but it does reflect that it's in our 2022 MP 006 budget. So we've technically already approved it.
That budget item is a lump sum amount. And then through your approvals, we allocate funds through primarily our cost share. But we do also these special projects at times refer and use funds within that project. So there is $350,000 budgeted within that existing project.
Okay, so we're just pulling out from that fund, that
Correct.
particular MP 006.
Correct.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. I'm seeing that a price cost estimate was provided to them on February 4th of $11,000 per compressor. Is $25,000 going to cover too, given what the costs of everything have gone up?
Yeah, that's the intent. I did not, obviously, I've been holding this for a couple months to try and find a way to support this, but they have funds available. They do fundraise. They do have reserves. So this is more of a helping them to not deplete their reserves. But when they update this in the very near future, they'll have the funds available to complete the project. So I'm not worried about that.
Councillor Smith.
Again, I'm sure we're all aware when COVID was out, we did approve funding in the spring for operations to get the doors open. It was successful. It was a busy year. Dean has worked hard. We have new board members coming in. We have more summer programming, ball hockey, lacrosse coming in, more revenues. And again, as the younger people step up and older people such as myself walk away from our boards out there, they do a really great job for us. And I noticed within this, they've asked for the 25,000 and they would be running the cost. They would take care of anything over the 25,000. And I assume this price came in February. So I would assume that it would probably at least be 30% higher than the 23,000. I will move the recommendation today going into discussion that Leduc County Council approve a grant of 25,000 to the new Sarepta Agriculture Society to support arena ice plant repairs with funding provided by the major project 2022 MP 006 recreation cost share capital contributions. And just in closing in that, we can put the $25,000 up to rebuild the compressors, or we can go to Warburg where I think we are hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace them in February when our residents aren't quite as gracious about no funding. So I realize and do appreciate the funding going in to that first class facility over a period of time. And I will move that recommendation for debate. Thank you.
Thank you. So new Sarepta ice, the arena, and that is a Leduc County asset, correct?
No.
No,
that
it
is
belongs to the Ag Society.
They own and operate. It would be similar to our halls
Oh,
or
okay.
the Kalmar Ag Society. They own and operate. We are just provide support and assistance.
And New Sarepta is Leduc County, it's not, of course, a town or a village. So interesting, the other 8 were actually really truly cost shares because it was to other municipalities. This one really is just an investment in a organization working within Leduc County.
Yeah, and I think we'll continue to look at that, but obviously we don't want that to be a negative. The
No,
cost share
it's-
is a way.
Yes.
But
that's
if it's within our municipality, we also have to make sure we take care of our support those facilities as well. So this is one mechanism to do that.
And as we heard Mr. Coleman say earlier, that there are more municipalities that are running into issues around cost shares, around recreation. We continue to do the investment. We continue to work with our neighbors to ensure that that's available. And we hope that that's going to continue to serve our residents for a long time. All right, we have a motion on the floor. I'm not seeing any further comments or questions. All in favor? It's unanimous.
The next item is a request for support from the Fishton Cemetery Maintenance Society. As council's aware, we do have a policy CDO5, which we created a few years ago to support the 5 cemeteries within the county that are on lands that Leduc County owns and are managed by volunteers. We do have a request for support. We have been working with Fishton for a few years now. This is the first time they've come forward with assistance for operating. Like many of the cemeteries in the region, they are struggling with volunteers. They're struggling with sustainability. And we are recommending a $3,000 contribution to support them. And just for clarification, this is what they've requested. I am recommending support of that 3,000, not as an annual contribution, but as a way to get them support. And then we'll continue to review with them if they need additional support in future years. So this is, in my opinion, a one-time request. If they need future support and assistance, we'll modify that number and figure out exactly what that might be for them.
Thank you for that. And this does fit within our policy, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Councillor Balazer.
Yeah, thank you for that. For those of you who don't know where Fisherton Cemetery is, it's actually just behind Rundle's Mission out at Pigeon Lake. The reason I would support this, we also used to have the old Fisherton school site that is out there. And yearly, we have this special committee that is taking in funds from the oil revenue there that this probably being put somewhere will support that back. So I can see it's really not going to cost us money.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis.
I'm looking at their application on our page 59 of the package for their operating budget. I see that that's typical for them to include what their request is that from the county in their revenue for their reporting. Should that be that way?
I didn't go back and forth with them on stuff. We had more verbal conversations to clarify. As you know, we deal with volunteers all the time, and I want to make as simple a process for them as possible. And that's why I accepted it in that format with my follow-up conversations of their finances and their needs and those sort of things. So that's why I didn't send it back or decline it or anything like that. So
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
This is one of the Leduc County cemeteries within our policy designated as being eligible for funds. And again, this is a huge problem right across the county, not only county-owned cemeteries, but everywhere as just the world changes and people may not visit long-lost relatives. So whoever puts the motion forward, it's obviously within policy. I'd be supporting that today, that we help this group of people out.
Thank you, Councillor Vandenberg.
Just for a clarity matter, the applicant that put forward this, I believe the name reads Kevin Mayer. Is that correct? Beaver? Okay. Good. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, well, I will put the motion on the floor. As Councillor Smith said, it does fit policy. It was a policy that we just put in place a few years ago. So recommend that Leduc County Council approve a grant of $3,000 to Fisherton Cemetery Maintenance Society to be funded from the Operating Stabilization and Contingency Reserve or 2022 internal savings. Thank you. Further comments or questions? All in favor? It's unanimous. On to number 11.
yeah, the next item obviously continues the trend of struggles with volunteers with our cemeteries. The difference with this recommendation is this is not one of the 5 that fit within the policy. But council had previously received this letter of request, and we have reviewed this request, and we're recommending to deny the request for financial assistance. Obviously, we understand the difficulties they face, the challenges they face as volunteers maintaining these cemeteries, no different than the 5 that we own. But there is no policy that fits within this. And so that's why we recommended denial of this recommendation. I have had verbal conversations with this resident as well, and to explain our approach and how we can support them differently than versus financial or assistance.
Thank you. Comments or questions? It's never easy to say no to a volunteer group. And certainly a volunteer group that's taking care of a cemetery, and I understand that. But when we brought forth and worked on our policy, we really were only limited to public or, county-owned cemeteries, of which I believe there were 5. We also believe that there were opportunities for churches that were still had a link to a larger parish to be able to look for support through there. So I will be supporting the request to the denial of the request. Counselor Smith?
I see as part of the request, there was a question at the bottom, just said that would the county of Leduc consider funding the cutting of the lower bowl of the cemetery south of the cross and the ditch? And I don't know where that is or what that looks like. We'll continue to fund the cutting of the area above the grave. So I'm just, we remove snow from some of the churches. We do services. I'm wondering if there's gift in kind or if there's some way that we can go through and maybe cut a ditch or cut a front area while our stuff is down. This is a problem that's not going to go away. Eventually, we're going to end up with a bunch of abandoned cemeteries, which would be a tragedy because in a strategic plan, which is coming up, we talk about our history and stuff. So I would like today, the recommendation is there not to fund it, but I think going forward, Dean, if you could find something that we can do for gift in kind or as our grass cutter goes by, much the same as our grader, because we do that. And again, just challenging the council to do something for an ongoing or an increasing problem. Thank you.
And just to follow up to that is we did have conversations with the agricultural services related to their policies and with snow clearing and with our public works department. So the policy doesn't apply to the mowing currently, but if council wishes to review
That
how
policy, yep.
and what impacts or a policy, then we could take that back for consideration.
And I would guess that there probably wouldn't be a mower down that road from Ag Services anyway, so, because it's a country road. Comments, questions? Well, I guess I will put the motion on the floor for debate that Leduc County Council deny the request for financial assistance from the Holy Trinity Ukrainian Orthodox Parish. And I do that regretfully, but I also know that it doesn't fit in our policy. And as Councillor Smith said, if we want to review policy and make some changes, we can do that at a later date, but right now this is not in policy. I have Councillor Vandenberg, Councillor Lewis, and Councillor Balazer in that order, please.
Just wanted to clarify the comments Councillor Smith made. And is there direction that you're taking from that comment to go away and come back with?
Would you like a motion at the end of, we have a motion on the floor right now. Are you asking if he needs a motion to look at the policy?
Yeah, I think so, because I think it's worth at least exploring to say yay or nay that it's a possibility or not. And I'm just trying to follow through with Councillor Smith's thought and suggestion and don't want it just to be dropped. If it's in conflict with, or if it's completely different than what the intent of this motion is, that's fine. But I want clarity before we vote on this motion.
Can I just clarify your question? The motion on the floor right now is to deny. So we have to deal with that motion first.
Right.
If you are
And so then
asking.
is Councillor Smith prepared then to put a motion forward afterwards?
If I could, definitely, I would like us just to examine the policy and see if there's something we can do, which isn't onerous
You're good with
to the county. So I will, after we deal with what's on the floor, I'll bring that forward. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis and then Councillor Balazer.
Thank you. Living across and growing up from a cemetery, I've seen my parents work and maintain that cemetery for 45 years and understand the work and the time commitment it takes. I will not support, or I will support their recommendation. Sadly, knowing how much work actually goes into it and care. Thanks.
Councillor Balazer.
Yeah, I too will support this again. The biggest problem I have with this is the gentleman that made request taught me school. And I do know this church very well where it is, but if we do the one, it's going to open that floodgate. And we've had these requests before that we've turned down. So I think we have to turn this one down, and then I'll go to Councillor Smith's recommendation. We'll take a look at that one. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion to deny the request on the floor right now. All in favor? It's unanimous. Councillor Smith.
Again, getting the wording right. Could I put forward a motion that the policy committee have a chance to review the policy on the funding or care of cemeteries in Leduc County?
So policy CD 03.
Yep.
Oh, 05, sorry. That we review CD 05. Sorry? Dean?
No, I don't want to jump. I just potentially maybe a totally different policy.
Okay.
So as long as that we have leverage.
Well, we'll start by reviewing that policy at the committee, and then if we need to create a new policy, we'll go from there. Okay. All in favor? Unanimous. Anything else, Mr.
I
Honesty?
think I'm done. I think that's the list.
I think that's,
Oh, I did. There's one more. Thank you. Just thought. The last recommendation is from our Leduc County Library Board. It is more of a process through the province and the requirement of council to approve their recommendation and appointee to review their financials. So they have recommended Ashley Rounceville, who is the current manager of the ATB Bank in New Sarepta, someone that the community trusts, someone that the library board has worked with, and they're recommending our support of that individual to complete their financials. And just to clarify, we're approving it as a financial reviewer, so we don't require them to complete a formal audit each year. They do have a bookkeeper. They would appoint this person as a financial reviewer of their information to submit to the province and to Leduc County.
thank you. As chair of the library board, go ahead.
Yes, I am
Councilor.
honored as chair of the library board to be before you today. I encourage you, any of you, to come out and just audit the meeting at any winter evening. They are great and they're working really well. The recommendation today, again, the library board did approve it as well, but municipal affairs within the library division just wanted credentials of Ashley, who has taken over as manager of ATB in New Sarepta, and she is preparing an audit for last year with the books, and will be the person going forward because her mom used to be the manager and she's retired, and her mother used to go through and do it. So it's the local community. So the recommendation that Leduc County Council approve the appointment of Ashley Rounceville as the financial reviewer for the Leduc County Library Board, as per the recommendation of the board.
Okay. Process really approval is all this is. Any further questions? Comments, debate? All in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Well done. Haven't seen you that long for years. On to 5D1, which is Royal Oak's outstanding deficiencies. Mr. Bain, I understand this is yours.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you for that. You've got a report and a recommendation here. And this report follows on the heels from a report that administration brought to a council workshop on the 26th of May. And you'll see some familiar information here, I think. And so that report was intended to facilitate a discussion with council around the outstanding deficiencies in the Royal Oaks subdivision, and to have some conversation around the prioritization of addressing those deficiencies, essentially. And this report is intending to create a direction around that exact issue. And so you'll see here, Madam Chair, members of council, administration has developed a list of deficiencies that we consider a priority for 2022. And it's the same list that you would have seen on the 26th, but we want to bring it here for council approval for direction going forward. And that list is on page 73 of your package here. It's an attachment to the report. And so you'll see that some elements that are on that list, it's an itemized list broken down by subdivision stage, essentially, are recommended to be deferred into future years or perhaps reduced in scope. And based on that information, there's some numbers there. The total estimated value of all of the outstanding works in Royal Oaks is just over $454,000. And you'll see that the spreadsheet that you have that's up on the screen there identifies the specific outstanding deficiencies that administration is recommending be completed in 2022. And the dollar amount required to complete that work this year is $291,669. That's an estimate, of course. And as council is aware, the county is holding $50,000 in security for this work from the developer through the different stages of subdivision. And so the balance of funding required from Leduc County to carry this work forward in 2022 is $241,669. And so that's the recommendation here, Madam Chair. I just wanted to also point out that myself and Councillor Vandenberg, the councillor for the area, did meet with some members of the community association last week, and essentially went through this information and talked about this recommendation coming forward to council. I would say it was a very positive conversation. The individuals involved for the CA were supportive of the direction that we're bringing forward here. There's an understanding, I believe, that the deficiencies are pretty, there's a pretty decent list of deficiencies, as you can see here on the screen. And so there's some value in putting some priority around that list and perhaps pulling back scope where that makes sense so that more can get done sooner, to get a level of standard that the community would expect. And so that's kind of the basis for the recommendation here, Madam Chair. I just would also point out, as you'll see here in the report, that there's a plan laid out here for engaging the community on a broader basis going forward. So the conversation we had last week was with specifically members of the Community Association Board. And so we have to engage the broader community. We've done that in the past, but it's been some time since we've done that on a broad level. So pending outcome from this conversation and council's approval of this information, we would be doing a direct mail out to all of the residents in Royal Oaks. We would update the webpage on the Leduc County website that's dedicated to the Royal Oaks subdivision. And we would be scheduling an event to meet with the residents again as well, similar to what we did last summer. And so there is actually an event plan for July 6th that the Parks and Rec is currently spearheading that we think we can probably piggyback onto that. So that's not finalized, but that's looking like that could work timing wise. So there's some steps that we can take here in the pretty short term to get this information out far and wide. So.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis and then Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I'm looking at the $50,000 of security and the cost that's estimated for what the total might be. Future development, is there security only $50,000 as well? How do we know that? I guess we don't know anyone will claim bankruptcy, but it's a lot of money to our taxpayers to have to pay to finish what someone has agreed to start. I guess.
Yeah.
I don't even know what my question is.
Mr. Coleman, is that a standard holdback? I was going to ask the same question with the same rationale as Councillor Lewis, that, you know, any other bankrupt developer, we're paying a lot of extra money. Is that standard, or can we change that, or what's our go forward? What's our learning from this?
Yeah, so I would say your learning is to take 100% securities.
Okay.
And make sure they're adequate. Don't base them on their engineering estimates, base them on ours or an independent. You will be inundated by developers to cut a deal. We're building houses. This is good for the municipality. You're going to get taxes. I've heard it all over 30 years. And when it fails, this is the consequence. The residents and taxpayers of this municipality are now on the hook for something that the developer should have been paying for. And that's because of poor decision-making by previous councils. Sorry, that's the facts.
No, thank you. And thank you for starting my question, Councillor Lewis. Councillor Smith.
I guess I have a question. All of the things that you look like you're going through and doing is dead or missing boulevard, turf, trees. And again, there's going to be a maintenance cost if you're putting in fresh trees, fresh lawn. Is that going to be a deployment of Leduc County Public Works, or is that going to be a landscape company that will take it into the fall and get it ready for winter? Then, because that will be an added cost of maintenance. So these special, I guess, treatments take hold.
So, Madam Chair, a couple of points on that. I would say that the default is that it would be the county's responsibility, but there has historically been an expectation that the developer would take steps to establish a homeowners association who would take that at least some of that responsibility on. That did not happen. So we did actually broach that subject with the folks we met with last week to kind of get the thinking going on that. And that expectation is already in the community. I think there's an appetite to do that. I would say that we don't know exactly the timing around that happening in reality. So there likely is going to be a higher standard of care that the county will have to bring to this development based on what would be happening here. So yeah, I guess that's would be my comment.
Just can't leave us.
No, I just want to make sure, because obviously Parks and Rec does the maintenance.
Okay.
So I just want to clarify that, you know, we have already planned for that maintenance.
Okay.
At the time when a developer hands that over, once they've completed their warranty periods. So we've already budgeted and planned to complete the maintenance of the community as we anticipated. So
Thank you for
so
being
just to
so proactive.
clarify that. Yeah.
Councillor Vandenberg.
Yeah, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit with Mr. Bain's comments. The meeting went very well. The expectations of the residents were not out of proportion. They commented on the common sense that went into this, that there was some things that just didn't need to be done, They're very game on the concept of the HOA, Homeowners Association. In fact, pointed out that they've already started and have alluded to the county being out there doing the things. And it was kind of funny. We joked the grass we met in a public area, green space. The grass was just mowed. And I looked over at Grant and said, that was a pretty good call that you made today before we had this meeting. But their comment was that the county has responded, is working well. The sense that I walked away with there is that this community is, they're caught on the end of a short stick, but they're not unreasonable. And they just want to carry on with their lives and feel that they have a good working relationship with the county.
Okay. Would you be willing to make that motion then, Councillor Vandenberg?
I would be. And the motion that I can read, county provide administration approval to commence the work identified, to complete the identified deficiencies within the Royal Oaks Estates and approve the funding request in the amount of $291,669 for construction to be undertaken in 2022. And that the funding source be security held by Leduc County and internal savings, asset light cycle, land management reserve.
Thank you. Motion is on the floor. Looking for any comments or questions, debate. Seeing none, all in favor? That is unanimous. Mr. Bain, or sorry, not Mr. Bain, Mr. Coleman, do we have a policy related to security?
Madam Chair, members of council, I don't believe we do. We have a procedure or practice when security amounts are asked to be less than 100%. It's based on prior history of the developer's success, and then obviously council has final authority on those decision points. But Grant may want to elaborate on that a little bit as well.
That pretty much sums it up. There's a form of development agreement that council had historically approved. This goes back years. And the form of the agreement includes 100% security. And to vary from that, we require a council approval. So it isn't actually in the form of a policy. It needs to be, and that will be brought forward, but that's what the practice is.
I'd like to make a motion that county council refer to the policy committee for the development of a financial security for development policy. Is that the correct term, Mr. Coleman, or how do I phrase that?
That probably gets you there, Madam Chair.
Okay.
You might want to make reference to the form of the development agreement, because that's the framework within which the security amount is actually identified.
So it referred a policy to create a policy on, I'm leaving you to fill in the blanks for me.
The form of development agreement.
Okay. And that does it. Okay, and again, this policy would then ensure consistency, and if there were to be, for some reason, a change, it would have to come back to county council to actually approve that change. So it helps and protects our administration from being pressured to make a deal, depending on who they're dealing with. Thank you. Councillor Vandenberg.
So the only question I have in there is, is there any specific guidelines within the MGA speaking to this, that this, in fact, this motion is complementary to or runs in contrary to?
The MGA is actually silent on the requirement around securities. So there is a bit of latitude there.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So again, this is part of our due diligence to try and ensure we're not in a situation like this again. Looking for no more comments or questions. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. On to Ms. Klamosko.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So administration has a report for your review today to establish the 2023 budget guidelines. So within their recommendation, we're asking for council direction on setting the guidelines for the 2023 budget. So going into the background of the report, there are three attachments to the recommendation report. So one is the environmental scan. So ultimately, the purpose of the environmental scan is really to look at external and internal data to identify opportunities and threats and compile some information that we need to consider when setting the 2023 budget guidelines. So in that environmental scan report, we have an economic outlook, we have a summary of federal, provincial, regional, and local variables and their impacts to Leduc County, as well as a preliminary assessment projections, including potential impact of assessment appeals that we look to compile some information to inform this discussion. We also have the report establishing the budget guidelines, and then also have an established budget timeline for council's consideration. So a few things, the plan for this afternoon is not to go through all of the attachments in detail, but there are a few things within the environmental scan that I just wanted to touch upon, just because then that relates specifically as to why council or administration has made the recommendation to consider up to a 3% tax budget increase for 2023. So going to the environmental scan report, a few key things I'd like to highlight. And if council has any questions on any of the items in this environmental scan, please let me know and I can answer those questions as we go through the report. So on the first page of the report, the one thing I just wanted to highlight was the second point within the key highlights with elevated inflation continues to be a central theme for 2022. So that is something that we're definitely seeing the impacts from in terms of operating impacts and within our capital program. So again, looking at what they've provided is for Alberta inflation should fare better than the national average, currently forecasted around 4%. So a fairly high rate of inflation. Moving forward, the next item within this report I wanted to highlight specifically was going to provincial variables. So one significant impact that we're going to see going into 2023 is a reduction in MSI funding for next year. So currently, the provincial government is moving away from the MSI grant program and looking to replace it with a local government fiscal framework grant program. Right now, they're gathering feedback from municipalities about establishing what this new grant program will look like. We just completed administratively a survey last week, providing some feedback to the province. But right now, how that program is going to be established, what the parameters for funding will be, what the funding formula will be, we do not know at this time. So going to that point number two, historically, MSI funding has been a very consistent source of funding for Leduc County. In 2022, we were allocated $7.5 million of funding for 2022. That contribution will be reduced to $3.3 million for 2023. So just to speak to this a little bit, what has happened with the MSI program leading up to this year and into next is the provincial government really allowed municipalities to actually almost borrow from the future to fund projects in a current year. So really, they allowed some pulling of MSI funding from the future from 2023 to supplement what municipalities could access earlier. So that's why the allocation is really a dramatic change. Typically, on average, we would have about a $5 million, a little bit more than that annual allocation, but they allowed for funding to be brought forward. So really the impact in 2023 will be substantial for us when you go from a $7.5 million annual allocation to a $3.3 million allocation. So that is one significant piece. The other provincial variable that I wanted to highlight was the police funding model. So you'll see that in 2022, the amount that we're paying for this new funding model Again, a change that came to us from the provincial government is just over $1 million. But going into 2023 and 2024, that annual amount will increase to $1.6 million. So that is another significant financial impact going into 2023. So I wanted to highlight that piece.
Councillor Smith.
I'm not sure if you've heard anything, again, with the province cutting back. Have you heard anything on the federal gas tax? It's been doubled for years going forward. Is that the indication of next year's budget, or is it too early to tell whether they'll give us double what has allegedly coming to us?
I don't have that information readily available for this discussion today.
We had the discussion on the police budget, and we had all of these naysayers that they would go, and by the looks of it, the dollars are getting there right now. I think it's a really good time with the leadership going on, with the government being in there, that the concerns are, I see the price going up, but I look at a few people that have called the police in the East End, and they come out to a serious crime and don't even show up anymore and won't return calls. So if we're looking at the value of what we're getting, it's a real concern of not only our municipality, but rural municipalities going forward. It's a bill without any increase in service, in my opinion. So it's something that we should be looking at, communicating, that needs some examination.
Councillor Vandenberg.
Do you mind if I take that comment? And we have our Protective Services Committee this week, and which will have representation there, and put that on the table and see what they have to say about it. Do you mind if I take that? Thank you.
To continue on.
So moving on through the report, a few other areas that I wanted to highlight was within the local variables. So we have, just around the current state of the economy and Leduc County revenue. So just wanted to highlight again, just around that inflation piece and some of those cost escalations that we're seeing within our budget on consumables, products, equipment, and services. So I just provided an example of a couple of reports that did come to council earlier this year when we did tenders for graders and a tandem gravel plow sanding truck. We did see fairly significant increases come through the tender process. So again, we anticipate higher costs to continue into 2023. Just moving to the next page, just wanted to highlight just that historical tax dollar budget. So you'll see when you look back the last 5 years, we've had within the 5 years, we have 2 years where we actually had a fairly substantial decrease to our budget in 2020 and 2021. So in 2020, we decreased our tax dollar budget by 4%. Obviously, that was within the time of the COVID-19 pandemic and the start. In 2021, we also did do a reduction to our tax dollar budget of 3.54%. So I wanted to highlight that I think that Leduc County has been very mindful of the realities of the COVID-19 pandemic and the economy in 2020 and 2021. But we are seeing some fairly significant financial impacts coming forward in 2023 that we'll speak to in a little bit more detail when we get to the budget guidelines. So the final section I'll highlight in the environmental scan is the assessment projections for 2023. So just looking at this sentence here provides us kind of what we're looking for in terms of what we're seeing for growth potentially going into 2023. So using the 2022 mill rates, the assessment changes that our manager of assessment services is projecting going into 2023 will result in an increase of property tax revenue of 1.68 million. So that's a really positive piece of information that we have to inform our budget guidelines for 2023. So any further questions on the environmental scan? Otherwise, I'll move to the next document. So the next page is the 2023 guidelines. So we're looking, this is the information that's within the motion, the recommendation that's suggested in the report. So again, we outline what documents would be included in the 2023 budget documents. So that would be the corporate plan, department operational plans, operating budget projections, long-range financial plan, a major project plan, capital project plan, and new initiatives plan. Administration is putting the recommendation for council's consideration today to assume up to a 3% tax dollar increase over the 2022 budget. That would equate to approximately $1.4 million of additional budget for next year if we were to approve 3%. The funding for the major project and capital project plans would be a minimum of $5.5 million of tax dollars funding, and then the budget process would follow the 2023 budget council timeline. So I will just go to the timeline and then come back to that guideline. So we've outlined a process that we've been using successfully, I think, in the past with council in terms of some various budget discussions throughout the year so that we can look at smaller pieces of the budget to then use those interactions with council to inform the budget package that goes to council in November. So we have today setting of the budget guidelines with council. In July and August, there'd be 2 discussions with Public Works Committee on the road and bridge programs. Then going into October, we would have a exclusive council workshop on the major projects, capital projects, and new initiative plans. And then our budget binders would be distributed to council on November 14th, and budget deliberations would occur on the 21st, 23rd, 28th, and 30th of November this year. So circling back just to the recommendation. So this is what is put in the budget guideline document. So I would like to open the floor for discussion with council around administration's recommendation that's before you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Thank you for the information. It looks good. Again, this is a law, has been an established system that you've put in for many, many years. It works really well. The one concern I have is you're looking at a 3.0 tax. I would be supportive of a 2.9% as the ceiling, which is a kick of $35,000 or $40,000 off that 1 point change million that you had. And of course, in budget, it can go higher than what you've set. But again, right now, I'd like to keep it below 3% and make it at 2.9. And I'm not going to move the recommendation, but just throwing that out there as part of the discussion. I support everything within the recommendation. However, I would like to see a 2.9 tax dollar increase over 2022 go into that recommendation, not the 3% that's recommended.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Scobie?
I guess you mentioned 2.9. I think over the years when we've had increases, we've kept them at the 2%. I just feel that that's a kind of a more, it's what's happened before. We did some big drops on taxes, but we've always kind of kept with that 2%. And I just think now is the time, all our residents are taking a licking from our utilities and groceries and everything else out there. It might mean cutting some projects, cutting some the work that we do, programs, but I would like to see this down at 2%.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Lewis?
Thanks. Just a comment. It's tough no matter what to see that we're going to try to put 3% on. It's one of the toughest decisions that we as council has to make are these budget decisions, and knowing what's coming down the line, even in public works discussions, something's got to give. It's either our percentage or projects. So kind of like Councillor Scobie, if we can keep it around the 2%, I would be comfortable with that.
Thank you. I was going to say 2.5 because I just want to compromise, but it does say up to, and I understand that up to, but like what I heard from the other two, I think our residents, I think this is a tough time. I mean, COVID was tough for a different reason. The cost escalation on every single part of our life is pretty horrific, and we might be just doing less with less, but I'm not sure that up to 3 is fair. Councillor Balazer and then Councillor Vandenberg.
Yeah, I'm kind of along that lines too. And Renee, I appreciate all the cuts that we're going to be getting from the government here, but I tend to agree with Ray over there and Kelly Lynn. I would like to see it closer, hanging around 2. I know coming in at 2 is going to be tough, but I think between that 2 and 2.5 would kind of help out our residents a lot. And would even make me feel better. Thank you.
Counselor Vandenberg.
I'm not disagreeing with what anybody says here. This is a very difficult task. However, if we give administration the ability to take a look at the 2.9 or 3, and it does say up to, I was going to point that out, at least then when it comes back to us, we have more choices that we as a group can say, we really don't need this, with the idea of getting it down. If we start out low, then you can't offer us choices to choose from. So I think the instruction could be to, stay with the 2.9 to 3.0 with the idea that when we see what is out there, then we can cut that back.
Counselor Smith.
Second time around, again, I know Mr. Coleman takes it personally, the amount that comes in, and I think he's brought it in every year lower than what the projected was. And I think what it offers us, and I'll just go back to the 2.9%, it offers us choices, which people have been talking about, and we know we're going to be cutting. We can make some choices on the projects are put before us. We decide what we want to fund that year. I know they go back and work their magic and find their dollars. And usually, I don't know if Dwayne has ever brought in the amount we've asked him. It's always been lower because he takes it personally, the budget component. So, and that's a good thing. So I would like to see the 2.9. I can be supportive of 2 or 2.5, whatever you come in on. I don't like 3 being on the books. And again, it's a ceiling. And if things are terrible, we can cut back to a nothing, this worst case scenario, or we can fund to where we are and we can decide projects will probably not make the cut this year just because the increased cost of the projects that we will be moving forward with. So I'd like to give admin flexibility. I'd like to tell our public that we're dampering it down. We have a ceiling. So again, whatever council decides, I'm good with it, but I like giving our admin the opportunity to come back because they really work the budget and give us the choices to pick projects which need to be shelved for the year.
Thanks. With that conversation, I will move the recommendation as up to 3. I've heard what you said, and it isn't magic, right? It is hard work with individuals who are passionate about the work they're trying to do in our county. But I think that both our manager and Ms. Klamosko have heard our concerns. And if we get into budget deliberations and we're too close to 3, then again, council has the ability to pull back and say no, because who knows what it's going to look like by November anyways. So I will read the recommendation into the record that council direct administration to follow the guidelines outlined below in the development of the 2023 budget. The budget will include the following documents: corporate plan, department operational plans, operating budget projections for 2024 to 2026, long-range financial plans for 2024 to 2033, major project plan, capital plan, new initiative plan. Also, the interim budget for 2023 will assume up to a 3% tax dollar increase over 2022. The funding for major project and capital project plans will be a minimum of $5.5 million in tax dollars, and the budget process will follow the 2023 budget council timeline. Motion is on the floor. I'm not seeing any. Yep.
I'd comment on that. I would agree with that. Just with kind of the understanding, it'll be up to us, I guess, once we start looking at the breakdown of what administration brings. We're going to have to, if I want this thing to 2%, like I said, well, we're going to have to look at some of the projects and whatever, because all our costs are going up. The diesel fuel for graders and parts for graders, and the work that we have to do is like everybody else. It's the cost has gone up dramatically, and so we have to work that in, but we'll just have to take a look at projects and wherever we can when the time comes.
Absolutely. Councilor Vandenberg.
I'd be supporting the motion today. The 2.9 to 3% is marginal, $40,000, $50,000, as Councilor Smith had pointed out. I'm more interested in knowing what administration can do and propose to bring back. So it then becomes easier for us to build us,
Yeah.
to cut and slash some of those things, as opposed to not having those choices.
Thank you. Okay. So we know that we're giving them some tough work to do. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay. On to 2022 to 2025 strategic plan, Ms. Klamosko.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we have the next report for council's consideration is the 2022 to 2025 strategic plan. So subsequent to the October 2021 municipal election, a strategic planning process was initiated to create Leduc County's 2022 to 2025 strategic plan. 2 days of workshops facilitated by Ian McCormick of Strategic Steps Incorporated were held with council in January 2022, and 2 subsequent workshops were held on April 26 and May 26. Since the last workshop, the following work was done by administration. So we did the graphic design and layout of the plan, and we also completed a review and did edits to the plan for adherence to our brand standards. So administration has provided a draft strategic plan for council's consideration today. There are 2 points within the plan that I wanted to have a brief discussion with council about, just as we work through creating this draft document for council's consideration. There were a couple of questions that I wanted to pose directly to council to get your decision on. So there was 2 pieces. There was one on page 4 of the strategic plan. Due to COVID, we did not take a group photo when council was one. So right now we do not have a current group photo with council. So we have included your individual photos. So I wanted to pose the question if council wanted for administration to schedule a group photo to be taken, then we could do so. Or if council was pleased with the individual photos within the strategic plan. So that was one question that I wanted to ask council.
Councillor Smith.
In the name of saving money and the fact that all of us are 5 years younger in the previous photo and none of us changed, I like that photo. The group photo, we're all 4 years younger. We're all the same people
That was just taken last year.
and we already paid for it. So I'm
Oh, you mean use that one from there? I'm fine with just the individuals are fine too. I mean, so we'll just leave it as is.
Okay, thank you. So the next item that I wanted to talk with council about specifically was going to mission, vision, and values. So when we had our workshops, council did spend quite a bit of time speaking specifically around the values and really the phrases that accompanied the values that you selected. So there was just one consideration around the definition on integrity. So currently the plan has we do what we say we will do. So there was just a proposed change to that with we follow through on our commitments. Just looking at how the other phrases were for the different values. So that definition, just wanted to provide that alternative wording to see which one council preferred.
I like the second one better.
So
Just
it's
fits
we
with the language
follow
a little
through
better. We
on
follow
our commitments. Does that? I'm seeing heads nodding, so we follow through on our commitments. Seems reasonable. Okay. So are there, I'll just outline the next steps, and then if there's any other questions that council has on the draft strategic plan. So the next steps, once council does approve the strategic plan, we'll be looking at printing the plan. We would look to share the plan at our state of county address. And then also look to roll out the plan to the public via the website, social media, and County Chronicle. So those would be the next steps taken. So are there any other questions with the strategic plan that council would like to bring forward?
Councillor Lewis and Councillor Vandenberg.
Thank you. I'm looking on page 93 of our package, which is page 6 of the plan. Your goals you've identified, you have 2 engaged communities. Was that on purpose, or was that just it's just the same goal. So I'm just questioning that.
Yeah, so that is that higher level goal of creating that engaged community. So there was 2 specific strategies that council wanted administration to focus on. So there was just, I guess it signifies the level of importance that council identified 2 engaged community strategies. So they both relate to that same goal.
Could
So
number 1 be engaged communication or something? Because it does talk about communication. I hear what you're saying. It does look, I thought that was just the heading for the goals. But
So if we go to, I'll just go to a different page to show you where we're drawing that from. So when we go to strong leadership, you have the goal of create an engaged community. So it's really tying to that specific goal is why we have that. So we could change, like expand on that, the wording of in that to that create an engaged community, or we could also change the order so that you don't have the 2 engaged communities right beside each other as well.
Absolutely.
So
might
that
work
would
better.
probably
Yep.
look better.
Thank you. And then Councillor Lewis has another comment, and then Councillor Smith.
Thank you. And then page 94 of our package, which is page 7, I believe. Deep community connections. We had talked about possibly moving, I know in the other areas, we had moved our seniors up. This one shows them at the last. I'd rather put people before, I'd rather it show that people are our priority, youth and seniors, if possible.
Just reorder there.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can absolutely make that
You
edit.
had mentioned that in our workshop. So, yeah.
Just on page 96 in your robust economy one, you had Leduc County has a population of 14,416. The population of the last census is 14,907. And this is a statement that might be relevant from the Alberta government. Leduc County had a population of 14,907 in 2021. You've identified it as 14,416. They go on to say, and this helps our growth or perception of growth. The population of Leduc County increased 1.22% year over year and increased 5.59% over the last 5 years. So I'm not sure, definitely correct the number. I'm not sure if you wanted to include there was continuing population growth and then going into part of the region, but definitely the one number corrected and the other one 5.59 population over the last 5 years is a positive.
Thank you for the math.
I wonder how that gets into all the growth projections that we did in that station.
Yes. Or you could ponder yourself. Councillor Vandenberg.
And my question is directed on page 95 and specifically 1.3.1. Based on our workshop this morning, our master plan is should we be referring to the recreation and parks master plan in that line item? It now only reflects the recreation master plan.
We can make that edit.
Okay. Anything else? Ms. Klamosko.
Just one question that I have for Councillor Smith. If you could forward me the link of where you're looking at that information, just because we will want to reference. Yeah, we can work with you to look at where that source is for that information. Any other edits or questions that council may have?
I don't have an edit or a question. I just want to compliment you on the simple language and the great layout, which makes it actually inviting to read. Everybody likes to read bullet point or, and I think it's laid out really, really well that would invite people to read it. And you've done a great job with trying to keep the language as common language. So thank you for that. So would we move this with some
As amended.
amended?
Move as amended would be appropriate,
As
Madam Chair.
amended. So I'm looking for someone to put the motion on the floor. Councillor Vandenberg.
The council adopt the 2022 to 2025 strategic plan as amended.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing any hands for comments, questions, or debate. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much for your hard work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now, need a motion to go in camera. Oh, sorry, no, we have 5E3, cancellation of June 28th regular council meeting.
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council. So the final agenda item, which administration added earlier today, is regarding the June 28th council meeting. As council's been made aware, the Little Potato Company is doing their ceremonial sod turning and have invited all of council to attend that event. It happens to be on the same day as the council meeting. In review of the agenda to date, there's only minor issues on the agenda that can be moved to a subsequent meeting. So I would encourage council to consider moving or canceling the date in order to allow for members of council to attend the event on the 28th.
Okay, looking for a motion for someone to, Councillor Wanchuk makes a motion to move the items from June 28th to July 12th
And cancel the July,
and cancel
June 28th.
the June
meeting.
28th to attend the Little Potato Company ground opening ceremonies. I just had a call from Miss Santiago today. It was actually a message in which she said, I realize it's your meeting date. If you could just have a few minutes so you guys could come over and see. And I phoned her back and I said, we're actually considering moving our meeting in order for everyone to attend. And she was over the moon. She was just over the moon. So I just wanted to put that in before we go into debate. Comments, questions? All in favor? It's unanimous. Now I need a motion to go in camera. Councillor Lewis, all in favor? It's unanimous. And I will
How does she sit in this short chair? Oh, my God. How does she? That's what we used to do with Sean Willie, is put his chair right now and then put John Whaley's up here. His feet wouldn't even touch them.
We used to a lot.
We're live. All right, welcome back. Live streaming is back up. We've come out of camera. And I have one further motion to make today. If I could have that up on the screen, please. I will be putting forward a resolution today that council adopts the finding of the external investigator and finds that certain public statements made by Mayor Tani DeBlanco regarding the proposed Creekside Solar Project were made in breach of Mayor DeBlanco's duties under Section 5.3 of the Council Code of Conduct bylaw. At the relevant time, Leduc County Council did not have an official position on this project, nor does it have one today, and the public remarks made by Mayor DeBlanco did not represent the will of council, nor did they accurately reflect the public remarks of some of her fellow councillors. Mayor DeBlanco's conduct in this regard was inappropriate and fell short of the standards expected of members of council for Leduc County. Council acknowledges Mayor DeBlanco admission of inappropriate conduct and accepts her verbal apology to council. We have a motion on the floor. Debate. One more time, looking for any comments before I call the question.
Councillor Vandenberg, I do appreciate the ability of the code of conduct to and its internal investigation and the appropriate findings. So I appreciate that as a tool, as a councillor, to be held responsible. And so I'm in support of the motion today.
Okay, further comments before I call the question? Go ahead, Councillor Lewis.
This is not a place that any of us ever want to be. It's been very difficult for our council for the past 2 months. It's caused a lot of heartache for a lot of us. So I do accept the mayor's apology that she made to us previously today. And I can support the motion.
Okay. Last chance for further comments before I call the question. All right, all in favor? That's unanimous. And one more, which is adjournment. Ray? Ray adjourns at 5:23. Thank you. And just let me do this because my term's coming up and I won't get to do it now. Thank you.